G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. I'm your host, Edward Fox, and together we're going to dive into the lives and stories of extraordinary individuals I meet from every corner of our globe. G'day y'all, it's The Edward Show. I nailed it. I got g'day y'all out this time, folks. It's The Edward Show, and today we have a special guest all the way from Australia, Ralph Anania, author of Life Done Right, I think. Let's see the book. There we go. For those of you that are listening on the podcast, you got to check out the video. So Ralph and I, both Aussies. I say Australian by birth, American by choice. Ralph, you published author, a coach, successful entrepreneur, several different businesses bought and sold. Tell us a little bit about who Ralph is and how you got to where you're at today.
So my journey started at a very young age. I was born and raised in the fresh produce industry, where mum and dad, who immigrated from Italy in the 60s, had a little fruit shop in our local suburb that I lived in, and spent my early years working before and after school and on weekends in the family store. And from the age of about 4, I started to go to the central markets with my dad, and I really enjoyed the hustle and bustle of it all, and it was really exciting. In those days, it was in the center of Sydney, and it was very dynamic. It was really exciting.
Central market. What to explain for people that have not been to one of those wholesale markets? What is a central market?
So central markets is where the growers from all over Australia, farmers from all over Australia, would bring their produce or send their produce to wholesalers that would sell it on their behalf, or some farmers would come and sell it themselves. There were two sections of it. So there was the section where growers would come and sell their own product every day. That was more for the local growers. And then the interstate growers would have wholesalers representing them who would sell their product for them. And then you would get all the shopkeepers. And in those days, it was supermarkets. Everybody would go to the central markets. There was no direct deliveries like there is today, no distribution centers. It was just all happening in the central market. So as you can imagine, it was very, very busy. And also in those days as well, we didn't have the luxury of cool rooms and refrigeration that we have today. So when you went to the central markets, you had to basically purchase the product early in the morning, get it back to your store before daylight, to fill your shelves, open the doors with a full store, and then hopefully sell out by the end of the day, because the next morning you would go back and buy again. And gotcha. that was how I was raised in the fresh produce industry, which was exciting. It really was exciting, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I learned a lot from my dad. The negotiation part of the experience was incredible, and the lessons that I learned at a very young age just carried through for the rest of my life. And since then, I've owned multiple businesses, as you said. It's well into 30s now. I've owned over 30 businesses, owned, sold, acquired, and it was really exciting. The journey's been exciting, and whilst it may sound like it's all sunshine and rainbows, it's not. Business is a tough gig, and you really got to focus on what it is that you're trying to achieve and understand what the challenges are along the way. And for me, I was bullied at school, so I didn't really have a great schooling. I didn't enjoy school at all, and I didn't really learn everything that most people would learn at school today. So I did it the hard way. I had to go out, and everything that I've learned over the years, I've been self-taught. I've done multiple courses to get to where I am, but I've always had that willingness and drive to never give up and always to better myself. And even today, where I'm nearly 59 and I'm still learning, and I believe that it's important that we continue to learn, because if we don't, we basically start to go backwards. So the journey was, before and after school in the family store. And then at the age of 20, I acquired my first business. And that business had an annual revenue of around $500,000 to $600,000 a year. And in those days, which was in 1984, was a lot of money. And I grew that business with my two brothers, and in 1989 we had peaked at 10 million annual revenue.
So you
in
took that.
in 5 years.
Yep, you took that from 600, 500, 600,000, or 400, 500,000 to 10 million in 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, and it was done on the back of the experience of understanding the customer, understanding the demographics, because it's really important to understand the demographics, that you're in. And a lot of people don't realize that. You can go into business and you've got to understand who it is that you're serving, because not all people want what you have. So you have to understand your target audience. Today we call it target audience. But in those days, it was really important to understand who your demographics were, meaning who is living in your area, so you can service those people. Culture has a big influence on business. You can go into, and everybody that would be listening or watching your show would understand this now. You can go into areas where it's got a very large community of Asians, and specific Asians. It could be Chinese, it could be Vietnamese, it could be Korean, and you've got to understand who it is that you're catering for. It could be Europeans, and that's the important part. And when you understand who it is that you're catering for, that's where the magic happens, because then you're servicing the people that want what you've got. And you don't have to work as hard, because you're servicing the people that want the product that you're trying to sell.
Right. It's not like back in the day when we didn't know what bok choy and dragon fruit were, right? and
Yep.
we would see those on the shelf, and white old family, like mom's like, I don't know what that is, and we're not touching that. Now it's not so much that issue, but there would be certain segments of the population that would be looking for that product. So just like to answer to what you're saying.
Yeah, correct. And just to add to that, Ed, what changed everything for me was people would go to a Chinese restaurant in those days, because Chinese restaurants were popular,
right?
And they would eat bok choy, but they wouldn't know what it is.
Right.
In the fruit shop or in the supermarket shelf. They wouldn't know what the product was. So I then started to have my own chefs working for me full time, just cooking and showing our customers how to cook certain products. And you talk about things like bok choy, for example, all the Asian vegetables. And then on the other scale, you have things like eggplant, which is aubergine in the US, but
right.
Things like that where people didn't know what they were. And when you started cooking and putting those European or Oriental flavors into the product, they would love what they were tasting. Right. And that's how we started to build our business, all based on customer service. Customer service is, something that I have taught now in 14 different countries around the globe. And I'm very, very big on it, because it's customer service that drives your business.
Yeah. And exactly. And so you guys built that up in 1989. And then what did you do?
So in 1989, 1990, I was approached by a supermarket who was not far from where our store was, and they wanted me to supply them with produce, because the owner of that supermarket's parents would shop in my store because our product was better than their son's store. So we then started supplying them with fresh produce, and it was funny, because when we started supplying them, they had a weekly revenue of $20,000 a week in fresh produce, and in 4 weeks we doubled it to 40,000.
Wow!
And then we continued to grow it from there. And they saw the success, and they started opening up doors, which then got us into becoming the biggest and preferred supplier for the IGA brand.
Right.
And IGA supermarkets, which are also in the US,
which is independent
grocers. Yeah, independent grocers. So basically the model was that they were individually owned, and they all traded under the IGA banner. So we then started just growing and evolving from there, and fast forward a few years, we built a business that had an annual revenue of $130+ million, and it was a lot of work. I mean, we had 350 odd staff, and we had DCs, distribution centers in in multiple states, and it was a large business. We'd grown from that.
Was the growth shocking to you? I mean, I know it was what you were working towards, but when you took a breath and looked up from your nose to the grindstone sort of position, did you go, wow, like, was it shocking to you, I guess is my question, or you'd done all the hard work? So
no, there are pain points. There are a lot of pain points, and
right.
there are pain points and a threshold in every business. So when you build a business, you organically grow, and you should never look at putting a ceiling on growth, because if you're growing organically, if you do everything correctly, and I always say when I'm speaking these days and I'm sharing my wisdom on the stage, I'll always say to people, don't ever just look at the bottom line, because the bottom line is the byproduct of how well you do everything above the line. And above the line means if your ratios are right, if your sales, your purchases, your wages, your expenses, all of that are in check, your bottom line takes care of itself. What most people do is they keep looking at the bottom line and they think we need to increase our margin, but the margin is not the answer. It's the efficiencies that you need to look at, and efficiencies need to be worked on every single day. You don't just put something in place and then leave it and set and forget. A lot of people want to work with that set and forget mentality, but it depends on what business you're in. If you're in an online business where you've created something and it's just basically throwing marketing dollars at it, sure, it's set and forget. But when you're in a bricks and mortar business, you've literally got to nurture that like a baby. So a baby needs nurturing every single day, and so does your business. So what's important is for you to understand where that threshold is. And for me, there are a couple of milestones. When I went from turning over $10 million in our store to growing that to 25 million, that was a bit of a culture shock, because you then need to expand in a lot of different areas, and more so start looking at your management team and having the right people around you, because at $10 million, I was the CEO, but the CEO at $10 million was the chief everything officer.
Right.
I'd be driving the truck, I'd be loading the truck, I'd be delivering, I'd be doing everything, right? As well as my brothers, of course. But
hold that thought for right now, folks. Did you hear what he said? At $10 million, he is still the chief everything officer. He's still doing everything. So those of you that are getting to 100 grand and getting to your first million and thinking that you don't have to do the work, you know the truth. Go on, Ralph. Thanks.
Absolutely, because what happens, Ed, and it's very important, the growth always also can bring complacency. Mm-hmm. People grow their business and then they start to become complacent. And that's a dangerous place to be. Complacency, if you get to that point where you become complacent, you're basically staring down the barrel of bankruptcy, because it'll gobble you up very, very quickly. So you need to stay on top. So from 10 to 25 was a shift. From 25 to 50 million was another shift. From 50 to about 75, 80 million was a huge shift. And then the next shift came at about 125 million. At 125 million, it was a very, very different structure. Now, I tried to maintain as best as I could a structure where it was still family driven. Right. I didn't want to have a corporate structure with a corporate mentality, because unfortunately, when you look at most corporations, there's no soul in that corporation from the people. I mean, yes, people enjoy working and they love their job, but there's got to be soul. And soul, I mean the people that absolutely love working, love coming to work, and they've got a vested interest. So I surrounded myself with good people. I made sure that I had the right team that I could draw from and take their advice. I always looked at people that knew a lot more than I did. I always had great mentors that had been there before me and done it, because I didn't have all the answers. And even today, with everything that I have and have built, I still look for mentors that have created more than I have, so I can learn from them and learn their wisdom, because that's important. Most people, unfortunately, and we see it a lot more today, they want to leave university and become the CEO. And you're missing a huge chunk. And yes, it's great to be the CEO if you've got a great team around you. So just on that, before I continue, I always say there's the CEO role can be the easiest or the hardest. It depends on the team you have around you. If you have a great team, then, and which I do have, it allows me then to be the visionary and to continue to grow, because I've got the team behind me that can come with me and push through. But if you don't have a good team behind you, the CEO's role can be the hardest, because all you're doing all day long is you're basically putting out spot fires.
Right.
And that doesn't allow growth. That doesn't allow growth.
So I heard someone say one time that they're the chief encouragement officer. When you get to that size company, it's like surrounding yourself with the right team and encouraging them to do what they do best.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important that that continues, right? Because you want people to want to come and work with you, not for you, with you. And I always encourage people with giving them autonomy. So when I bring people on board, I don't want them to be perfect. I want them to be very good at what their craft is, as long as they've got the passion. If they've got passion, I can teach them skill. If they've got skill with no passion, then they're no good to me, because skill without passion is not what I'm looking for to grow my business. So I look for passion. And if they've got 80% of what I'm looking for, but they've got a belly full of passion, I can work with them on the other 20%. And I want them to make mistakes, because they'll learn from their mistakes. Most organizations don't allow their people to make mistakes. So then they operate from a fear base.
Right.
I'm scared that if I do something wrong, the boss is going to come down on me, or I'm going to get fired. Right? I don't have that. If I let them go, because when you let somebody go, if they've got the right intentions, they're not going to do something wrong intentionally.
Right.
They're going to get it wrong because they've tried something, because their passion has driven them, right? And then if the support is there, you bring them back in and you go, okay, where did we go off track? Why did we go off track? How can we correct it? What can we do to move forward? But if you say you can't make mistakes, then they won't take the risk.
Do you have a sort of certain, at the level you've built up now, do you have a certain amount of risk that you will take with someone and allow them to make a mistake to a certain level, or is it just, it is what it is?
Look, one of the biggest issues that I see in a business is that most people know what they're good at, and they don't achieve their full capacity because of that fear factor that holds them back.
Right.
I bring them in and I will say to them, look, you go out there and you do what you think is best. Now, I have one thing that I do in my business is I have a weekly management meeting, and I just like to get all the senior management in each division to come in, and everybody's together. So that way there's no them and us.
Right.
That mentality of them and us gets thrown out the door, because if there's an issue in one division and you've got every division in the room, they can feel each other's pain if there's a problem, right? So if production, for example, the business that I have today, which is a manufacturing business, if there's a problem in production and sales know about it, they understand their pain. So there's an understanding, and they try and work together rather than against each other, rather than blaming production or blaming each other. They'll work together. So I do that religiously. That allows us to grow. And if there are problems, we air them. We allow people to bring their issues to the table, and we address those issues. And everybody gets to give their input, because I like to go around the table and I say, Ed, how would you handle that? What are your thoughts? Before I give my view, I want to get everybody's thought. That allows them to grow, to continue to grow. So it's really important to surround yourself with the right people, but don't ever let go of the reins, because you need to be on top of your business every single day. And that means looking at your numbers, making sure that productivity is there, efficiency is there, accountability is there. And that can only happen if you're there. Now, sorry, you don't have to physically be in the business 24/7, right? Because then you're micromanaging. I'm not talking about micromanaging. I'm just talking about having the right people that are going to allow you to go out there and grow the business that you want to grow.
Right. Keep your finger on the pulse. So many times I talk to business owners that have been working in their business for a lot of years. And let's say it's sub 5 million. So it's 1 million to 5 million. And they say, oh, I found a great guy to take over and I'm going to go do this. And then 2 years later, they're back because they didn't keep their finger on the pulse. Right. And
Yeah.
the guy sold them on the idea that he or she or they could run the company, but they couldn't. You're the magic. And until you have an exit strategy to move out of the business altogether, you've got to keep your finger on the pulse. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'll come back to that in a sec, but I'll just want to go back to today's generation where they finish uni and want to become the CEO, right? And that's great, but they miss the most important part of the journey, and it's learning every aspect of the business. So one thing that I do is I make sure that I know every aspect of the business, because then when I employ somebody, I know what I'm looking for. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And then I can also allow them to take full autonomy of that role. What happens when you want to go from university straight into a CEO role? You miss all that. You don't experience that growth. Now, I've got my son who is 21, and he's just finishing uni, and he would love to come into the business, and I would love him to be in the business. He's doing sports management at the moment, which is totally different to the business, but he enjoys it and he loves the industry. So therefore, I'd love nothing more for him to be in the business, but he would have to start in production on the floor to understand every aspect of the business. And if in 10 years' time, he has everything that it takes to be the CEO, I will gladly give him that role. And at 31, to be the CEO, knowing every aspect of the business, I don't have an issue. But at 21, I can't allow him to be the CEO, because you also have to have some level of respect from the people around you, and that's your staff. And if you don't know what pain they're going through, you can't guide them, because every staff member needs to be guided at some stage. So the one thing that is important, and I've seen this, and it's interesting that you say people that are building their business from 1 to 5 million, is that they think they need, and I fell into this trap. So I don't think I'm telling you something that I haven't done myself, because everything that I share, Ed, and that's what I pride myself on, everything I share is from my own experience. It's what I've lived through. So let me tell you, as I said at the beginning, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's, there's some hard calls that happen. In my 30, it's nearly 39 years now, of being in business, I've come close to bankruptcy 3 times. I've never been bankrupt, but I've come very close. And most people would just opt out and go, yeah, put their hands up and they've had enough. I pushed through, and that's a real hard slog. So I understand what it means, when you go through those challenges. So most people that when they're growing and they think, I'll bring somebody in because they've got all the credentials, but what they miss is the baggage. Everyone has baggage. So if they've got baggage from another firm that they worked for, they're going to bring that baggage over to you, right? And I've seen that happen in small organizations, and I've also seen it happen in large organizations. Now, I saw it happen about 10 years ago here in Australia, where everyone would know Virgin Airlines and everyone would know Qantas Airlines. Now, at the time, the chief operating officer at Qantas had gone over to Virgin and had turned Virgin around, but he bought over a lot of Qantas people, and Virgin, within a short period of time, basically became Qantas. The fun of the young, vibrant staff on the plane that were playful were gone. He brought in older people. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with older people, but they weren't as vibrant and playful as what the Virgin brand had. So there was a massive shift. And flying as much as I used to fly, I would be on a Virgin flight and it would be like I was on a Qantas flight. You definitely knew the difference. So that's what I'm talking about when you bring over your baggage. In some cases, it's okay, but not in all cases. So you need to understand who it is that you're actually bringing across to make sure that they're delivering what you want.
Right, because if you forget your base, if you forget the base of the customers that are using your product and service and are using that product or service for a particular reason, just like you said with Virgin, we want this young, vibrant, playful crowd. They're going to lose their base because now your leadership has changed where that's no longer their main driving force.
Correct, correct. And that may have been a directive from above.
Right.
It may have been, but one thing they forgot is that consumer, which was their customers, were used to that.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like you.
How much do you think the culture of the company put forth by the leadership team matters in business today?
It's everything. It's everything. I mean, the culture of a business stems from the leadership. So if the leader isn't driven or doesn't have the mindset or the vision for a team environment, and leadership is a big thing. You've got to have leadership. Everyone wants to be led in business, Ed. Every employee wants to be led. They might not tell you that, but they want directive. They want leadership. If you leave a child on his own, to his own devices, he's going to do a lot of nothing.
Right.
But if you guide a child, the child will grow and evolve. Right. And it's the same in business. If you got a team and you leave them to their own devices, they're not going to give you the efficiency, the productivity that you need. If you lead them, and I'm not talking about standing behind them with a whip, I'm just talking about encouragement, building a culture where everybody works together as a team. One of the things that I do not have in my businesses is silos. I will not allow that to come in and infiltrate into my business. And
what do you mean by that?
Meaning that you have to go through a certain person to get things done, and you can't go directly to the CEO or the owner or the boss. You've got to come through this channel. Yes, there is a direct report that you will report to, but you have to have a culture where no one, no matter who it is scared to go and speak to the boss. Right. No one. And the other thing as well is that the boss needs to take an interest in the business. So he needs to go and make sure that he's talking to the staff every single day.
Right.
And I have a very firm belief that if you drive the team to succeed together, you will create a champion team, not a team of champions. Right. And when you create a champion team, you win games. When you create a team of champions, everybody on that team wants the ball. There can only be one striker, right? So this is where businesses fail, because when everybody's working together as a team, they'll help each other out. And when I have, people that are away, or they're down, or they're sick, the rest of the team picks up without me even having to ask.
Yeah, for me, the greatest example of that in sports is New Zealand and their cricket. They don't have any superstars, or they have one superstar, but they build a team that works together and beats India at the World Test Championship because they work together as a team. They're not a team of they're not how did you put it? They're not a team of
champions. They're a champion team.
Right. And so I think we can relate to that a lot in sports. So changing tacks, because I could listen to you talk this all day, and we'd have a 7-hour podcast, and people don't want that. I want that, but that's okay. So talk a little bit about, because last time we were talking, you hadn't bought this business. I think you were just in the process maybe, or we couldn't really talk about it, I think. So you bought into this business, but really that your passion, in addition to the business, is teaching other people, which it comes through when you're talking on the podcast. You've written the book. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to writing the book, and then you're moving in. You've done some speaking from stage, and you're building a course. Take us down that road.
Sure. So I guess 10 or 12 years ago now, or 13 years ago, actually, it was in 2010. I had sold one of my businesses. I had some health issues that I needed addressed, and I had to take a different route. So I really needed to change my lifestyle. And in the fresh produce industry, I was very well renowned for leading the industry in innovation. So I was asked to speak at events and conferences around the world, which I did willingly on my own dime, and I enjoyed that. So in 2010, I went out and I guess got the right mentor to show me how to speak and on stage and make it a business. So I did that, and I did that for a few years, and I have spoken now in 14 different countries across the globe. I've taught my experience and shared my journey and wisdom through multiple different channels to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. With that then came COVID. Fast forward a number of years, came COVID. A lot of people were hurting. I had personally experienced the challenge of two clients of mine that had committed suicide through the COVID period, and it was very, very, very sad. And it led me to basically getting my story out there of my journey. And it's not my bio. There's a lot of my personal life in there, but it's not my bio. It's sharing my wisdom more than anything else, and my own experience of my journey of life. And through my journey, it's not just the matter of having the success in business and growing these large businesses. There was a stage where my ex-wife had left me and the children, and I had to basically reconfigure my entire life because it crushed me, and for 2.5 years I was an absolute mess. So that in itself was another journey that I had to go on and embark on, and it took a whole different level. It took it to a whole different level again. So all of that basically became what is today Life Done Right. And the book has now been picked up by a publisher in New York. It's gone global. It's in 20 different languages, and it was basically to get people out of the rut and out of the doom and gloom that COVID and the media had been selling us all. And with that now, I've just recently finished producing a online course, a program that people will be able to buy at a very reasonable cost and take the course on at their own speed, on their own time. It will be released on the 1st of June. And the reason for doing that is because I had so much positive comments that came back from people all over the globe that I was just literally overwhelmed, because I had never intended, to be anything, great or better than anybody else. It was just more, I wanted to put my story out there and change somebody's life. For me, it's not about changing the world. It's about changing someone else's life. And if I can change one person and that person can change somebody else, then I've done what my purpose is. My purpose in life is to change someone's life. So for me, that's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed it, because when you get the feedback that you get and the comments and the responses to posts and things like that I get from people all over the world, it's overwhelming and humbling sometimes. And I'm all about helping somebody else. It's not about the stardom. It's not about that at all for me. And this is why, you say, I'm in this business that I've recently acquired. So I acquired a business here in the Northern Rivers 6 months ago. It's a chicken meat manufacturing business. I absolutely love it because I like to still keep my hands on in a bricks and mortar business. Right. It's a phenomenal business. I've got an amazing team. I've got a phenomenal general manager who allows me to still be able to do the things that I do with my program, with the course, with speaking, and I still have private clients that I deal with. But it's all because of the leadership that they get from me. That's the biggest and most important thing, is the leadership that they get. And if there's one thing, and it's really important that I'll get this message across, is leadership is everything. You've got to be the leader that you want your people to be. And for me, it's not about being the boss. It's about leading every person in the business to become a leader themselves. A manager can do a job and manage a business, but a leader will take their team to heights that they never thought they'd be able to achieve. And I encourage everybody. I walk the floor every morning. I speak to all of my staff. I make sure that the janitor in the building is just as important as my general manager.
Right. So it's, again, you're instilling that company culture that says we are all part of that champion team. Doesn't matter what we do. We are all
Correct.
part of that champion team. We make up the team. And if one of you wasn't here, the team wouldn't work. So,
Correct.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about, and just to clarify, that is June 2023. If some of you are listening to this in 2050, the course has been out about 25 years. So there you go, right? So I'm just speaking it into existence that they're still listening to this podcast 25 years from now. So Ralph, if you had some words of wisdom, what I'm really finding a passion for are these guys that want to start a business. I left school at 15, opened my convenience store in 83. You got started in 84. I'm 15 in 1983. We do $100,000 the first year. We started off with a fresh fruit and veg run around town, but I had no clue what I was doing. My folks were doing that. I was in the store. And then we built it up to $500,000 in revenue. Little country town, Grafton, 20,000 people. And we never scaled the heights because we didn't know how, right? We didn't know how to do. So what could you share with most of the guys that I have a passion to help now are the ones that want to start a business, or maybe they've been doing a business for a couple of years and they still haven't got more than $20,000 in revenue and they don't know whether they should go get a job, right? And maybe a lot of them should. But what sort of advice do you have somebody when they're sitting here listening to you, $100 million companies, $200 million, $500 million? I mean, what advice do you have for somebody that's just wanting to get started and build a successful business for them and their family?
Look, before I answer that question, Ed, one thing that I will say is that I never had any intention, to build, $100+ million business. Right. I mean, I started off with a humble little business with mum and dad that had a weekly revenue of like $10,000 a week, and they were happy with that, and that was like huge in those days, right? So when I had hit $1 million in the business that I had acquired in 1984, I was on top of the world. But because we did everything well, and we continue to do everything well, it continued to grow organically. And by doing everything well, I meant we kept listening to customers. We kept asking the questions. We kept getting feedback. Now, one thing that is extremely hard to do, sorry, I'll let you go first because I'll answer that.
Yeah. Well, one of my questions is, are you of the opinion, and I don't want people not to do something because they don't have everything perfect, right? We have to learn to do things well, and that's where we continue to grow. But where do you stand on that? Oh, I don't want to get started across the country until all the lights are green. You learned how to do things well by talking to customers, but there must have been things that you made mistakes and you did wrong. That didn't stop you from trying, though.
Exactly. And that's what I was alluding to. So one of the things that I was going to say was that we took on feedback, and some of the feedback, and this is a challenge with a lot of people. No one wants to listen to bad feedback. Right. No one, right? And most people get offended by bad feedback, right? And I always say a customer that complains is your friend. A customer that complains is giving you the opportunity to fix the problem. The one that doesn't complain and doesn't come back is the one that you need to worry about. But most people don't do that. So you need to listen to what your customers are sharing with you, and you need to act on that. And there are things that, if you have an open mind, there are things that you'll sit back and you go, yeah, I could have done that a little bit better. And that's what we're going to work on next week. And then you work on that, and you then automatically grow. And it's important that you listen to your customers, because business in general is fairly straightforward. If you find out what your customers want, go and get it and make sure it is exactly what they want, and you deliver it to them, that's your business. It's that simple. The strategy on running a successful business is ensuring that those three key things are in check. Most people don't look at that. Most people fall in love with their product or their idea, and they go and ask their friends or their parents. And, I've never known a mother to say that their baby is ugly. It's like every mother's baby is a beautiful baby, but you have to take on constructive criticism. So you can learn from that. And most people don't like to have suggestion boxes because they don't want to hear what people are saying, and they can't get the business right if they're not willing to do anything about it. So that is really important. It is important for you to listen to your customers, identify the areas of improvement, ask your customers what it is that they'd like to see. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you believe we can do better? That's as simple as it was. I had multiple retail stores over the years, and I always had a suggestion box, and it was as simple as that. The suggestion box sign used to say, what do you like? What don't you like? We'd love to know. Right? And every single suggestion form I would go through every single morning. That was the first thing that I'd do every single morning, is go through that and respond to every customer that had left their details, every single customer, and ensure them that we would be doing what they'd asked or correcting what we had done wrong. That's the pinnacle. If you can get that right, that's where you'll start to grow your business. Now, growing and evolving from a level that, of a $20,000 base, it all comes with you being also innovative. You need to bring some innovation into what you're doing. You can't set and forget. That doesn't give you growth. We look at people like Elon Musk and we go, the guy's a billionaire, but he's never stopped. He's never stopped and gone set and forget. He's always been innovative. When something has failed, he's tried again until it was right. And we talk about, perfection. Right? No, perfection comes when you become complacent. When you believe you've reached perfection is when you become complacent. And unfortunately, we went to school and we were taught, if you practice and keep practicing, you'll become perfect. That is flawed in itself, because only perfect practice makes perfect. If you're practicing something that's wrong, it'll never be perfect. And I don't want perfection, because I used to live many, many years of my life having a perfection standard. And I found that it is very draining, exhausting, and it becomes very frustrating. And you then become very toxic. When we're always aiming for perfection, but I never want to reach perfection, because if we ever reach perfection, we stop trying.
Right.
And if you look at, and the easiest way to explain this is, look at the best athletes in the world. Every single athlete that has reached their pinnacle, they don't get to that point and go, thanks, coach, I don't need you anymore. I'm the best. I'll do it on my own.
Right.
They go and look for better coaches so they can become better again. Right. Yeah. So that's the importance, Ed. And I use sports as an analogy all the time to compare with business, because it's exactly the same. The fundamentals in sport is exactly the same in business. The approach is exactly the same. We don't reach a point and stop. That's why I say, and I continually say, organic growth, because organic growth is you continually become better and better and better. Now, over the years, I've had multiple coaches, multiple mentors, and my first coach, I engaged my first coach when I hit 20 million, because I was really struggling, and I engaged my first coach at 20 million, and I never looked back from that point forward. And I've had multiple coaches since, and many, many, many mentors.
Now, question, if you had known what you got from that coach at the $20 million level, would have you had coaches and mentors a lot earlier?
Oh, absolutely. I would have. Absolutely. For me, and this is one of the things that I highly recommend, is doesn't matter what level you're at. Don't worry about getting a beautiful website, and don't worry about having all of your externals perfect. I'd forego all of that and just get a coach. I'd rather spend money on a coach than on a website, because the coach will guide you the right way to do things. If it's the right coach, of course, because there are a lot of coaches out there that are not, I've got to say that, one of the things, and I really want to share this because I've experienced it myself, where people have gone to coaches and they've destroyed them, right? So please do your due diligence on the coach that you're dealing with. If you go to a coach and they've never been in business, right? And they're teaching you everything out of textbook. Run, just run, because that's not the coach that you want.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I have two
if
things
you're
I recommend to people that want to start a business. Okay. If they're afraid, there's a lot of people that are like the spider monkey that we learn about, that they hold on to the peanuts and they're captured when they put their arm in the jar and they don't want to let go of the few little peanuts they're making and make their escape. And I always think, like, you know what? There's some great, if you've never done a business before and you're afraid to get started, join an Amway, join a Mary Kay, join something that will teach you a system and give you a coach and teach you how to build a business. And then branch out and do something that you love, that you've got the business basics, but you got it really cheap, because getting involved in a good quality direct sales company, they will teach you a lot of that stuff,
yeah,
because they have systems in place that have built billion-dollar businesses, right? Or if you're willing to jump in, like you said, don't get someone that can preach it and teach it. Get someone that's actually been there and done it. They might not be the most articulate, but that's the guy that I want to help me dig the ditch, the guy that's dug the ditch.
yeah, yeah. And look, and there are a lot of people out there that that will guide and support. I mean, I've had a lot of people over the years, and I enjoy helping young people. I mean, one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping our next generation. And I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn and ask if I would mentor them. And I like to do. I can't take a lot of people on, but I like to do one or two every now and then and guide them. And I've had some great success. Just from a mentoring perspective, where I enjoy giving back. And it's important. And there are people out there, don't let dollars persuade your decision, because sometimes people think, oh, I don't have the money for a coach, or I don't have the money for a mentor. There are people out there that are willing to support you if you've got the passion and you've got the right intention. If you're just going out there and you've got the wrong intention and you're just using people, then you won't get anywhere. But if you've got the right intention, then you will find somebody that will support you. There are a lot of people like myself out there that are willing to help younger people, the next generation that want to come through, if they're willing to listen. If they're arrogant and rude and think that they've got their stuff together, then that's a waste of time.
We've got a mutual friend in Paul Odendahl, and he was on here before we started recording, and he's been in the insurance industry for 40 years, and that guy will help anybody. That guy and helps, and doesn't have any money. He helps people left, right, and center, and he has built successful insurance businesses and trained a lot of people, and he will just work with anybody. And those are the sort of people you're out there talking about, that there are people all around. All you have to do is look for it. I think one of the things is where there's a lot of people out there that are afraid to ask for help because they don't want to be seen as not knowing. We've been taught and raised in this environment that we have to act like we know everything, when you and I both know there is so much, even at your level, even at my level, we don't know what we don't know, except that we know that we don't know it.
Yep, exactly. And unfortunately, with the world that we live in today, and with social media and the fast pace that we live in, the world is used to the experience of click and collect. Right. We want everything instantly. And I've had people come to me and say, yeah, but I've contacted 10 people and, they all said no. And I said, what if the 11th one was the one that said yes?
If I could have, yes, at school, if I could have them all go out and do door-to-door commission sales or cold calling for just a month, and just have them learn the basics of having to do that stuff over and over again. And I like going through a deck of cards, right? Shuffling the deck of the cards and having the kids turn over a card. And I say, okay, every ace you get is $1. When you have the 4 aces, it's $4. And so I shuffle the deck of cards and they turn over 3 cards. And I said, oh, well, let's quit. Like, you haven't got an ace yet, right? And you know that story. And they know that there's 4 aces in there. I showed them the aces first. I didn't try and trick them and take the aces out. Sometimes you're going to turn over 13, 20 cards before you get your first ace, and sometimes businesses like that, not everybody that starts a business is going to have a successful multi-million-dollar business off the bat. And then a lot of people don't even need that. They just want a comfortable living for them and their family, and they don't want to build it that high. So you have to find out what you want to do and then learn how to do it. And I like your story, customer service. Everybody's talking about scaling, 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 and they all think that they can be the next Bezos and the next Jobs and the next Zuckerberg. Really, what you got to do is get out there and serve the customer. And then by serving the customer, you can grow organically and scale from there. But if you're not serving the customer, you've got nothing to grow.
Yep. And all those people you just mentioned took them 20 years to get to where they are, if not more.
Overnight success.
Right? So most people want that overnight success literally overnight. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But one thing that I think is very important for everyone that is listening or watching to understand is that you don't have to go and have millions of dollars to grow or scale. You can do it if you're smart. And most people out there think that only if I had the money, I could do it. If I had the money, I could do this. But the money is not going to change anything if you don't have the foresight, if you don't have the vision, if you don't have the passion. If you've got the passion, you'll find a way. And don't ever give up. Most people give up too soon.
Right.
Just before you're about to take off. And in the way that I usually explain it, it's the J curve in a business. And you can get that bottom part of the initial stages of a business that may get to a point where you keep doing and you're doing and you're doing and you're doing. You're not really seeing the results, but there'll come a point if you're doing everything right where you hit that J curve. And once you hit that J curve, because of what you've done right, it'll just go up. That's when you start to see that J curve really take off. But most people give up just before the curve.
Right.
Most people give up just before the curve. And the danger, Ed, the danger that I want to really share is that people that go into a business or have something that they've established that is successful right off the bat is so dangerous, because they think that it's going to be like that all the time, and they go and do things that they shouldn't be doing, right? Spending money, splurging, and they haven't really done a full analysis, and then they go broke.
Right.
Then they go broke. And the last thing that I just want to finish off, because I know we're running out of time, is most people in business have a need to be right. And the need to be right will send them broke. It's not about you. It's about listening to what is happening in your business, listening to the customers and listening to your team. Your team will give you great feedback if you allow them the platform to speak. Most business owners have this need to be right, and they won't listen to their team telling them what is actually happening in the business. And that's just arrogance.
Yeah, you've compiled a team around you for a reason. Now listen to them, learn from them. Surrounding yourself with smarter people than you in these areas, and then you don't want to take their advice. I mean, I just haven't understood. The nice thing for me as a 9th grade dropout, I look at this and I go, well, you've got some skills that I don't have. Now I have some skills that you don't have. I would love to learn what they can offer, right? When you surround those people. For me, it's amazing the things that I've been taught over the years. And I wish I knew how good coaches were when I was building my business in Australia, because I only started using coaches probably the last 10 years. I was already 40 when I when I got my first coach. I wish I'd gotten one at 22.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake that I won't make again. And so now I have a podcast coach, I have a sales coach, I have a processes coach, I have a mindset coach. Now, some of those are paid and some are not paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're all people I trust where they're coming from, and they're all adding value to my life, which is allowing me to add value to other people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love. Just like you said, it's the what we can do for other people. So speaking of that, as we end up, tell me, how can people follow you? Can they find you on YouTube? Can they find you talking about this sort of stuff?
Yep. So basically, my website is just ralphanania.com, and they can connect with me there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, of course. So it's just Ralph, RALPH, Anania, ANANIA.com. And they can just basically get in contact with me there, or the team from, that I have working for me from there.
Gotcha. And thanks so much for coming on and sharing. And if you'll hang around for a second, I would appreciate it. And we'll get this out. And as soon as we've got it out, we'll let you know, and you can share it out wherever you want it to go. And your book's available, I would assume, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, through the website, everywhere that books are available.
Yep. And the book website is just lifedoneright.com.au.
Okay, great. And we're looking forward to the launch of the self-directed course. That's the word I was looking for, self-directed. We couldn't think of it earlier. Like, I was trying to figure out, what do we call it when you can just work through it? I appreciate it. And Ralph, will you come on and update us in 6 months or so?
Absolutely. Anytime. I love speaking to you, Ed, and
Awesome.
It'd be a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Great. Thank you. G'day again. Well, that's it for the show. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like us, subscribe, follow, write a 5-star review, all the good stuff. Thanks a lot for listening, and look forward to having you listen to the next one.